نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم وعلى عبده المسيح الموعود عما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. The majority of Muslims believe that Jesus was raised bodily to heaven and someone made into the likeness of Jesus was crucified in his place. Saved from an accursed death on the cross, Jesus has been waiting some 2,000 years in heaven, waiting to descend back to the earth to defeat the Antichrist and establish an Islamic dominion. The teachings of the Holy Qur'an and Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, however, stand in complete opposition to this belief. This concept only entered into the understanding of mainstream Muslims after the rapid spread of Islam amongst the Christians of Arabia and the Byzantine Empire that brought this erroneous belief with them. For early Muslims, however, Prophet Muhammad's prophecy regarding the second coming of Jesus in the latter days was clearly a metaphor. For example, Prophet Muhammad states, Jesus will descend among you, break crosses, and kill swine. Now, if this is read literally, we would be left wondering what man would gain from Jesus roaming the earth, slaughtering pigs, and breaking crosses. If understanding Jesus' responsibilities, then, requires a metaphorical reading, why should we expect Jesus of Nazareth to literally reappear? Especially in the light of the Qur'an, which explicitly supports this assertion. Regarding the death of Jesus, the Qur'an records a conversation to be held on the Day of Judgment, where Allah will ask Jesus, O Jesus, son of Mary, didst thou say to men, take me and my mother for two gods beside Allah? He will answer, Holy art thou, I could never say that to which I had no right. I said nothing to them except that which thou didst command me. Worship Allah, my Lord and your Lord. And I was a witness over them as long as I remained among them. فَلَمَّا تَوَفَّيْتَنِي كُنْتَ أَنْتَ الرَّقِيبَ عَلَيْهِمْ. But since thou didst cause me to die, thou hast been the watcher over them, and thou art witness over all things. In response, the majority of Muslims object to translating tawafaytani as caused me to die. Instead, they employ various translations such as thou didst cause me to be raised. Secondly, it is claimed that because this is a conversation that is to be held on the Day of Judgment and Jesus will eventually return to earth, one cannot conclude that Jesus is already dead, but that he will die after his return. I will inshallah address both of these arguments. To determine the meaning of a word in the Qur'an, one must first assess the usage of that word in other verses of the Qur'an. Secondly, assess the Prophet Muhammad's usage of that word and his commentary on the verse being discussed, if available. And lastly, assess the understanding held by the companions of the Prophet Muhammad. As far as the Qur'an is concerned, the verb tawaffa is used 24 times, and its active participle, mutawaffi, is used once. As you can see, in all 25 of these instances, the word has invariably meant death or sleep. The Qur'an defines this usage when it states, Allahu yatawaffa al-anfusa hina mawtiha wallati lam tamut fi manamiha. Allah takes the souls at the time of death, and those not dead he takes at the time of sleep. Now we are left with only two options. In 5:17-118, Jesus responds to Allah's inquiry about whether he had introduced the concept of Trinity to his people by claiming that he was either 1, made to die, or 2, made to sleep, which prevented him from remaining a watcher over his people. Suggesting that Jesus is referring to himself falling asleep is not only bizarre, but also inconsistent with Prophet Muhammad's commentary on this very verse. In Bukhari, in the chapter of prophetic commentary of the Qur'an, Kitab Tafsir al-Qur'an, Prophet Muhammad regarding the Day of Judgment states, Some from my followers will be brought, and the angels will drive them to the hellfire. I will say, O my Lord, they are my companions. Then a reply will come, You do not know what they did after you. I will say, as the pious servant Jesus said, and I was a witness over them as long as I remained among them. فَلَمَّا تَوَفَّيْتَنِي. But since thou didst cause me to die, thou hast been the watcher over them, and thou art witness over all things. Here, Prophet Muhammad, when put in a similar situation as that of Jesus on the day of resurrection, quotes Jesus from the Qur'an and claims that he too was only witness over his companions as long as he remained among them, and that once he was made to die, Allah alone was a guardian over them. Thus, when Prophet Muhammad applied 5:118 to himself, whatever translation of tawafaytani one wishes to use must apply to both Prophet Muhammad and Jesus. Since it must mean death for Prophet Muhammad, it must also for Jesus. Surprisingly, the majority of Muslims around the world understand tawaffa to mean death, except when it refers to 5118 apparently. At every funeral, Muslims recite the prayer of Prophet Muhammad in which we implore Allah, Allahumma man ahyaytahu minna fa'ahyihi ala al-Islam, wa man tawaffaytahu minna fatawaffahu ala al-Iman. And those that you cause to die from among us, cause them to die upon faith, using the words tawaffaytahu and tawaffahu respectively. Moreover, directly preceding the hadith cited from Bukhari in which Prophet Muhammad applies tawaffaytani to himself, Ibn Abbas radiallahu anh, an uncle of Prophet Muhammad and narrator of that hadith, defines the word mutawaffika as mumituka. Bukhari states, وَقَالَ Ibn Abbas mutawaffika ay mumituka. And Ibn Abbas said that mutawaffika means mumituka. The word mutawaffika comes from the same three-letter root and verb form as tawaffaytani previously discussed and is from the active participle mutawaffa. And anyone with basic Arabic understanding knows that mumituka literally means cause thee to die. The only instance Allah uses this word in the Qur'an, He states, إِذْ قَالَ اللَّهُ يَا عِيسَى إِنِّي مُتَوَفِّيكَ وَرَافِعُكَ إِلَيَّ. So using the definition of mutawaffika as cause thee to die provided by Ibn Abbas in Bukhari, the verse would translate as, when Allah said, O Jesus, indeed I will cause thee to die and will raise thee to myself. Imam Bukhari rahimahullah alayh, by placing this simple definition of Ibn Abbas before the hadith of Prophet Muhammad, confirms that he, Ibn Abbas, and Prophet Muhammad all understood both verses 5118 and 356 to mean that Jesus has passed away. It also cannot be argued that the tawaffaytani and mutawaffika will apply once Jesus descends back to earth. Firstly, in 356, the sequence that Allah presents of Jesus begins first with mention of his death before any mention of him being raised. We must follow the sequence that Allah has put in place and not seek our own. Secondly, if we were to assume that Jesus was to come back, 5117 and 18 would cease to make any sense. If Jesus returns to see Christians worshiping him, how could he be shocked on the Day of Judgment at what Christians did after him, or claim that he was only a witness over them as long as he was among them? After having come back to earth and correcting Christian beliefs, then on the Day of Judgment, he could not be surprised at the behavior of the Christians or claim he was only a witness over them until he was raised to heaven. Instead, Jesus would reply to Allah that he had just come back from correcting them. The shock he actually experiences upon hearing the question is apparent in him pleading his case, and it's proven from the similarity Prophet Muhammad draws with his own scenario on the Day of Judgment, as recorded in the above-quoted hadith of Bukhari. At this point, it is often demanded that raise thee to myself, rafi'uka ilayya, be explained from 356. With a similar approach taken to understanding the word tawaffaytani, one can also understand the word rafi'uka, or raise thee. Among numerous instances in which the Qur'an uses this word regarding Prophet Idris alayhi salam, Allah states, وَاذْكُرْ فِي الْكِتَابِ إِدْرِيسَ إِنَّهُ كَانَ صِدِّيقًا نَبِيًّا وَرَفَعْنَاهُ مَكَانًا عَلِيًّا. And relate to them the story of Idris. He was truthful and a prophet, and we raised him to a lofty station. The same word rafa'a is used in relation to Prophet Idris, but it is understood to be an ascension of spiritual rank, not a physical ascension. Thus, the Qur'an rejects the notion that Jesus was raised physically to the heavens and he remains in this state unchanged for over 2,000 years. An unbiased reading of the Qur'an shows that like every other prophet, Jesus too has passed away, and thus the only recourse is to understand his second coming in a metaphorical sense. This understanding was revealed to the metaphorical second coming of Jesus as Prophet Muhammad prophesied in the personage of Mirza Ghulam Ahmad alayhi salatu wassalam, the founder of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. He writes, if anyone can cite a single instance from the Holy Qur'an or Hadith, or from ancient or modern Arabic poetry and prose, that the word tawaffa, when applied to a human being, God being the subject, has been used in any connotation other than death and taking possession of the soul, for instance in the connotation of the taking of the body, I bind myself on oath that I shall pay that person 1,000 rupees in cash by selling some of my property, and shall always hold him in high esteem as a great scholar of the Holy Qur'an and Hadith. That challenge still stands unmatched. وآخر دعوانا عن الحمد لله رب العالمين.